Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. NDP finance critic Shanna Phillips blasts the Kenney government over increasing auto insurance rates. The Bank of Canada governor speaks out about when he expects the Canadian economy to recover. And the Christian charity Open Doors is asking for prayer after hundreds of schoolboys were kidnapped by a Muslim extremist group in western Nigeria.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The Alberta government needs to step in and freeze increases to auto insurance rates. That's according to Lethbridge West MLA and NDP finance critic Shanna Phillips. Phillips says according to a recent report, the auto insurance industry collected $5.4 billion while only paying out $4.3 billion, leaving a $1.1 billion surplus. Yet auto insurance rates recently went up 24% for Albertans. Phillips says the UCP government needs to do something right now.
When you look at the big picture, each and every year since 2016, the industry's margins and their profitability have been improving. We want to call on the government again to freeze the increases. Once we are through this pandemic, reinstate that rate cap instead of going to the UCP's first instinct, which is to defend the insurance industry and be weak and gullible instead of helping struggling Albertans.
Early Wednesday morning, a Lethbridge business owner woke up to the news that his front window had been smashed. Catwalk salon owner Levi Cox took to social media to share what had happened to a mural out in front of his salon. Video journalist Ainsley O'Reilly is downtown and has the details for us.
Levi Cox, owner of Catwalk Salon, says that he found out around 2 a.m. that his front window had been smashed, and at 4 a.m. Lethbridge police arrived on scene. The mural itself is in support of the Black Lives Matter movement and stands in solidarity with marginalized communities. Cox believes that the attack was targeted.
I kind of left this up as a sign of hope, and I thought it was nice. So it seems a little interesting that it's specifically smashed. It's suspicious that that's the window that was smashed. I've had a lot of things go on down here, living here 18 years. My building was on fire in June, if you remember, and my vehicle's been vandalized. But to specifically bust out my window and this one, it seems a little bit targeted.
The artist who created the mural has offered to redo the artwork for free. Many in Lethbridge are discouraged that City Council decided to take $1 million out of the Lethbridge police budget. There were calls to actually increase the LPS budget and hire more officers to deal with the increase in crime in our city. Instead, now we may be seeing less police patrolling our streets. Adam Davis is a former police officer. He's also the author of the book On Spiritual Combat. Davis says police deal with a wide range of issues that no average person should ever have to experience.
Let me tell you something. Human beings were never created to see or experience the things that our men and women of law enforcement deal with day in and day out. The violence, the evil, the hate, they were not intended. They were not created to witness that, to see it, to deal with it. But through proper training and equipping ourselves with His Word, we're still human beings. We're still human beings. And we try to carry those things in our own strength and power.
Catch the full interview with former police officer Adam Davis. We'll also discuss how prominent PTSD is with our first responders. That's coming up in the second half of our show. The province announced that it has signed a historic agreement with Treaty 6 First Nations. Officials say the new accord will outline a formal process for ministers, chiefs, and councils to meet many times throughout the year. The government says the meetings will focus on priorities such as land and resources, health care, education, justice, and economic development. The protocol agreement gives Alberta and the Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations a way to have discussions, share information, and explore issues of mutual concern. The Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations includes 16 First Nations that span central Alberta. The University of Lethbridge announced that Mike Frank has been named as the Director of Indigenous Education and Communications. Frank, who received an honorary degree from the U of L, has been a student there, a research assistant, and is now an employee. The new position was created as a result of a partnership between the university and MasterCard Foundation. It's designed to create new opportunities for many Blackfoot youth to access education and the supports needed to become successful. Frank previously worked as the CEO for the Blood Tribe Department of Health. He also worked as CEO for the Salt River First Nation in the Northwest Territories and Executive Director of the Paul First Nation near Edmonton. The Lethbridge Hurricanes Western Hockey League season has been delayed once again. The January 8th start date has been cancelled by the league. Officials say they will hold a discussion with the Board of Governors and health officials to determine a potential start date. As Ainsley O'Reilly explains now, the WHL isn't the only hockey league facing uncertainty.
Lethbridge Hurricanes General Manager Peter Anholt shared his reaction to the WHL's latest news, leaving the season up in the air.
I think frustrating is probably as good a word as anything. And concern that that the season's going to be lost.
Anholt says it's been challenging, but nothing is off the table when it comes to innovative ideas surrounding the club.
Trying to find a way to muddle this thing together and be safe, but still give our kids the opportunity to develop.
Another league in limbo is the British Columbia Hockey League. Their junior players don't have a tentative start date, and with new government regulations stating athletes age 19 and older can't play, nearly half of their league is affected.
As a junior hockey league, that pretty much cut our league in half. We have about 48% of our players are age 19 or older.
Conversations with health officials and WHL officials are in the works, with Canes staff hoping for hockey in the new year.
I'm really optimistic. I think that, when you think of the divisional play, we can stay within our borders, especially when you look at the Central.
For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
A beautiful light show at the Yates Theatre is on display right now. As video journalist Micah Quinn explains, New West Theatre is highlighting the Christmas season in a new and fun way.
This is the new showcase of a holiday show of lights at the Yates Theatre, and it's meant to be viewed outside from the street in a socially distanced and safe way.
You can walk by and see the lights, or even better, you can park outside the Yates on the street and tune in your radio to, there's a special radio station, a short range FM broadcast, and we'll have a big monitor in the window of the Yates that has the station on it. And you can hear a short loop of Christmas tunes that have been recorded by the New West Theatre ensemble singers.
Viewers can tune into 90.7 to listen to the Christmas songs, and Ray says that it was important for New West Theatre to produce some kind of public engagement during the Christmas holiday.
I feel that we feel a great responsibility as a publicly funded entity, as a company that serves the public, that we really wanted to try and provide some light during these difficult times.
A holiday show of lights is also a kickoff for the New West Theatre 12 Days of Christmas.
And that's really just every day up until December 25th, we're going to be releasing a new piece of original content via our website and social media channels. A lot of that will be Christmas songs recorded by our New West Theatre ensemble. There will be some stories and a few other little surprises in there as well. So, it's our way to stay connected and give people something to look forward to every day.
The light installation will run every day from 6 to 10 p.m. in 10-minute cycles until the 25th of December, and the 12 Days of Christmas will go until Christmas Day as well. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Our pets do not know that we're in the midst of a pandemic. Now, that doesn't mean, however, that they're not being affected by what's going on. Loris Alexander spoke with Pets Mobile Lethbridge, which is doing a charity drive for Lethbridge Animal Services Food Bank to bring tidings of comfort, joy, and treats.
Obviously, the food bank is a program we've been running for a number of years, and obviously, just like any sort of charitable organization, it seems to attract more attention during the holiday season, I guess, both from clients who need access to the food bank and then obviously from people wanting to be charitable, really. So this year, a local company, Pet Mobile Lethbridge, they approached us and explained their circumstances. They're a new business that specializes in pet food in the Lethbridge area, and they wanted to do something to support a community initiative.
Every $100 cash donated, we convert that into our food, and we've discounted our food to go to this. And then For every $100, we're going to donate another $20 worth of food.
Plord said Animal Services hopes to share some of the joy of the season during a difficult time for many people and anticipates an uptake of need in the new year.
Probably after the holidays and into the new year, we may see an increase when those restrictions and people who maybe have been out of work because of those restrictions are going to be a little bit tighter as far as money goes in the new year.
In order to be considered for a hamper, people need to submit a request to Lethbridge Animal Services.
We've had families put in their names, and we've got a list of people, and then on Friday we will be doing draws depending on how much food we have.
As we speak now, I would encourage people to reach out to Pet Mobile through their Facebook page or their social media, or they can contact the Animal Services office as well, and we can provide some more details on that, because we certainly would like to take advantage of this local organization or company willing to help during this time. Beyond the holiday season and perhaps when this specific campaign is over, people can just donate product from anywhere, it doesn't really matter, directly to the animal shelter.
For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
The Ontario government sent a memo to hospitals asking them to prepare for a surge of COVID-19 patients within the next 48 hours. The request came as the province reported over 2,100 new cases today, along with 932 people already in hospital battling the virus. Hospitals in the province's red zones are being asked to ensure that they have at least 10 to 15% capacity for adult coronavirus patients. The memo says the actions the hospitals take will dictate how well they'll be able to handle the escalating demands. The arrivals of COVID-19 vaccines coupled with rising case counts will mean for a mixed bag for our economy. Now that's according to the Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem. He says the economy could slide even further in the first quarter of 2021 before improving as the vaccines roll out across the country.
There are upside risks, and certainly the development of vaccines, there is a scenario where the recovery is more rapid than what we have laid out in the October monetary policy report. At the same time, the near term, the downside risks, the near term are looking more serious. And particularly if the economy slides back, we were in a very deep hole. We've climbed a long way out. If we slide back, we're going to have further to get out again. So, those are the sort of things we have to evaluate and assess going forward.
The search for 5 missing scallop fishers continued today in Nova Scotia. Ground crews and small vessels scoured the coast for any sign of the crew and their ship that sank early Tuesday morning. Search and rescue officials say the body of one fisher was found late Tuesday night.
We conducted some overnight vehicle patrols and some shoreline work in harbors and whatnot. The weather continued to be not very pleasant over the evening hours, so due to the safety factors, we didn't have any teams searching beaches and the tide times as well. This morning, we anticipate having 25 to 35 searchers in that area. We're going to continue to conduct shoreline searches, and our investigation, we still continue to assist JRCC. They're still the lead agency in this search until they tell us otherwise.
Canada's planning on sending an astronaut to the moon in the year 2023. Ottawa signed an agreement called the Gateway Treaty with the United States, which will establish a new international space station that will allow for exploration to the moon and future missions to Mars. It also calls for a second flight for a Canadian astronaut to that future space station, which will be called the Lunar Gateway. The Major League Baseball club, Cleveland Indians, will be changing their team name in 2022. The ball club was feeling pressure by sponsors to find a more culturally appropriate name. Like the Washington football team, which was formerly known as the Redskins, they'll be dropping their name, which many argue is an insult to Indigenous people. Team owner Paul Dolan says even though the team has used the name for 105 years, it is no longer acceptable in the world. Indigenous advocate Joshua Hunt says the decision to change the name is right and will help in the fight against racism.
The announcement from the Cleveland baseball team is absolutely the right decision, and it was made after genuinely listening to Indigenous people, and we hope that this serves as the blueprint for the other professional and collegiate teams and the nearly 200 schools in Ohio that still have a Native American sports mascot or team name. And these mascots, they cannot coexist alongside claims to fight racism and the promotion of equity.
Many Jewish people around the world are celebrating Hanukkah this week. The event is also called the Feast of Dedication or Festival of Lights, reaffirms the ideas of Judaism and commemorates the rededication of the Second Temple of Jerusalem by the lighting of candles on each day of the festival. Now, there's a museum under construction in New Orleans to celebrate the Southern Jewish experience and is set to open next year.
Well, this museum that we're building in New Orleans, it's actually a reboot of a museum that originally existed in Mississippi back in the 1980s. It was founded in an effort to preserve what was a disappearing small town Southern Jewish life. As small towns, as populations left for bigger cities, very vibrant Southern Jewish communities were disappearing. This newest iteration of the museum is going to be updated and have an expanded mission. We're not just talking about the small town Southern Jewish experience, but the Southern Jewish experience overall, covering 13 different states, more than 300 years of history.
The Christian charity Open Doors is calling for people around the world to pray for the release and safety of hundreds of boys who were kidnapped following a raid by a gunman on their school in western Nigeria. The Islamist terrorist group Boko Haram reportedly carried out the kidnappings. Many Christians have been targeted, with several Christian leaders also being captured.
300 schoolboys are still missing after kidnappings claimed to be carried out by Boko Haram last weekend in western Katsina State in Nigeria. Open Doors senior analyst on freedom of religion in sub-Saharan Africa, Ilya Jardi, says incidents like these are an ongoing issue for Christians in this region.
Christians or civilians are living in that area. They can be a target as well, like all other citizens or people living in the area. A number of church leaders have been kidnapped for different reasons, even right now.
Jardi is urging prayer for the safe release of these schoolboys as well as for their families.
So let's pray for the parents of the kidnapped boys. Let's pray for the safety of these still missing school boys. Let's pray for the federal and local authorities for wisdom, for leadership, to do all their best to make sure these children, school children, have been released safely.
Peter Wooding for the Global News Alliance.
Courtrooms in China have been very busy this month, dealing with the trial of two Christian businessmen who were in court for selling audio versions of the Bible. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari says the pair are being charged with being involved in illegal publications.
This is the norm now for China. There are churches and underground churches and all sorts of missionaries and people who are sent over, but it's a risky job because the environment is so hostile towards Christianity, towards religion, towards Islam, and it's not getting any better. It's just that they don't want people to think that way, to gather, to get information from the outside world.
Catch the full interview with our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, who will also talk about how Russia has hacked into federal agencies' computers. That's coming up after business news. A 104-year-old Spanish woman rolled out of a hospital room after surviving the COVID-19 virus. Spain has had over 1.7 million cases of the novel coronavirus and over 48,000 deaths attributed to the virus. The fatality rate in Spain is 2.7%. Now, the fatality rate for those over the age of 80 is almost 15%. Nice to see that she beat the odds. In Madrid, where the patient is from, more than 40,000 people have recovered from the virus. That is incredible. Recovering from COVID at the age of 104. We've had incredibly mild temperatures in our region here, and that should continue for the rest of the week. In fact, we may even hit double-digit temperatures this weekend. A complete look at the weather forecast, including the long-range outlook, is coming up. Like you, I've been enjoying many of these mild temperatures across much of southwestern Alberta. Jeanette Rocher is here now with a full look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, let's talk long term. It looks like we may see double-digit temperatures by the weekend.
Yeah, by Sunday we could see the mercury rise to as high as 14 degrees. Not bad for, what will that be, December 20th? But today, Lethbridge wasn't bad as well. We actually had a Alberta record earlier today. Lethbridge was the hot spot at 5.8 degrees, so not too bad. -2 overnight tonight with some winds gusting to 50 kilometers per hour. Those winds should gust to 60 tomorrow, high of 5 for Thursday, mix of sun and cloud. Sunshine for Friday, 6 degrees is the high, 7 for Saturday, and as we were saying, Sunday could be a high of 14 degrees. Windy also, and windy conditions expected for Sunday as well. Monday, high of 1 degree with a mix of sun and cloud, and then that mercury's going to drop again to -2 for next Tuesday. We could actually see a chance of flurries on Monday evening as well. So mercury all over the place. 0 is our average high for this time of year, -12 the average low. 18 was our high temperature back in 1980, and it was a chilly -32 in 1964. Sun rose this morning at 8:23 a.m. and the sun set today at 4:32 p.m. as the days are getting shorter. Shortest day of the year coming up very soon. Okay, so a wind warning was in effect earlier today for Victoria as a strong frontal system pushed a lot of wind into both Victoria and Vancouver. Going to be expecting high winds tonight and tomorrow, 60 which is high for them. Chance of flurries in Edmonton, -6 is the high. Flurries also expected tomorrow in Calgary with winds about 50 kilometers per hour. -3 the high in Saskatoon, chance of flurries there. Flurries also expected in Regina with a high of 0 degrees. Wind chill expected in Winnipeg tomorrow, particularly in the morning. High of -4, but going to obviously feel chillier with that wind chill. -10 the high for Ottawa. It's -3 for Toronto under mainly overcast skies. Also -10 expected for Montreal with a mix of sun and cloud. Kind of a chilly day in that area there. Over in Atlantic Canada, Fredericton could see about 2 centimeters of the white stuff falling tomorrow. -6 is the high. -2 for Halifax. Charlottetown could see some flurries as well with a high of -2. St. John's also expecting flurries tomorrow with a high of 0. Also high water levels expected tomorrow with many waves as there's a strong storm surge expected there tomorrow. So there you go. That is your forecast.
Today's weather is brought to you, rain or shine, by the Gym in the North. Start your New Year's resolution today.
Online shopping scams are on the rise as thieves look to take advantage of the increase in people shopping online during the pandemic. They do it by creating professional-looking websites, pretending to sell gadgets, toys, and even cleaning supplies. To lure you in, experts say scammers pay for ads on Facebook, Google, and other sites. Analysts say the best way to not get scammed is to do an online search of the website along with the word scam or review. Canada's annual inflation rate advanced to its fastest pace last month since the start of the pandemic. Stats Canada says the Consumer Price Index was up 1% year over year. The increase was driven by an almost 2% rise in shelter prices, a 1.5% hike in rents, and 2.8% increase in furniture prices. Gasoline prices, meanwhile, fell 11.9%. StatsCan says the focus on spending around the houses is likely due to more people spending time at home during the pandemic. The Canada Revenue Agency says it is introducing a simplified process to claim up to $400 in office expenses for Canadians working from home. It will allow employees to claim these expenses as deductions on their personal income tax return for the 2020 tax year. Eligible employees can claim a deduction if they worked from home more than half of the time or at least 4 consecutive weeks this year due to COVID-19. Husky Energy shareholders have voted more than 95% in favor of a $3.8 billion all-share takeover bid by rival Cenovus Energy. Officials say the takeover will create a more resilient and stronger Canadian integrated energy leader. The combined company would create the third largest Canadian oil and natural gas producer by total production. Cenovus shareholders are also expected to approve the deal. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 60 points on the day to finish at 17,567. The Dow was down 44 points to 30,154. The S&P 500 was up 6 points to 3701, and the Nasdaq was up 63 points on the day to 12,658. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 26 cents to 47.88 US per barrel. Natural gas was even on the day at 268 US. Gold was down 31 cents to 1864.49 US an ounce. And silver was even on the day at $25.33 US an ounce. Wheat is at $272 per metric ton. Barley's also at $272. Canola's at $602, and corn is at $292 per metric ton. Live cattle were up 90 cents to $113.78, Feeder cattle were up $1.08 to $141.98, and lean hogs were down 48 cents to $65.98. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 78.48 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the Alberta government needs to step in and freeze increases to auto insurance rates. That's according to Lethbridge West MLA and NDP finance critic Shannon Phillips. Phillips says according to a recent report, the auto insurance industry collected $5.4 billion while only paying out $4.3 billion, leaving a $1.1 billion surplus. Yet auto insurance rates recently went up 24% for Albertans. Phillips is calling on the UCP to freeze those rates. Various Christian business owners in China are on trial for selling audio versions of the Bible. It's apparently an illegal act. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will have details coming up next. Chinese courtrooms this month were the scene for two trials prosecuting Christian businessmen for selling audio versions of the Bible. To talk about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, this is allegedly part of a new government crackdown to stem the tide on illegal publications?
Illegal publications and pornography.
The Bible? What?
Exactly. Look, this is part of the communism handbook, right? Take God away from them, take the books away from them, take any sort of knowledge or anything that will lead to them seeking freedom and thinking and gathering, and prioritizing family and God before other things. This is not surprising for where China is going, for where their leadership wants to drive the people. You and I were talking before during the break about how this is the norm now for China. There are churches and underground churches and all sorts of missionaries and people who are sent over, but it's a risky job because the environment is so hostile towards Christianity, towards religion, towards Islam, and it's not getting any better. It's just that they don't want people to think that way, to gather, to get information from the outside world.
They don't want to gather, and it's nothing to do whatsoever with COVID-19. Lisa, a boat loaded with explosives attacked an oil tanker that was docked at the Saudi port city of Jeddah in what authorities are calling an act of terrorism. This is the latest in a string of strikes against the kingdom's oil infrastructure in recent weeks.
Yes, and it has everything to do with the region's reshifting of alliances. Look, this Shiite-Sunni war has been ongoing, overtly, covertly, and as tensions rise between the Iranian regime and the West, they take it out on their regional enemies and those who they believe are getting closer and closer to the United States and to Israel. And that is the nations that are warming up their relationships with Israel. For example, the United Arab Emirates just had a hacking job done by the Iranian regime as well. So when you see attacks like this is the Iranian regime's way of flexing its muscles in the region, going after regional enemies and those who are, at arm's length reach for them to be able to exert themselves and say, look, we're still in the game, even though you guys think that Donald Trump in the final hours of his presidency, we'll see, but what we believe might be the final hours of his presidency is pulling everything, every trick he can out to marginalize Iran. They will try to exert themselves more and more.
Iran's president has gone on record saying that his country would rejoin the nuclear deal within an hour of the United States signing on. Now, will that take place after President-elect Joe Biden is sworn in next month?
Yeah, so that has been something that Joe Biden has talked about, that he would get right back into the Iran nuclear deal. We have Democrat lawmakers writing a letter to Joe Biden saying, you should get back into the deal unconditionally, no preconditions. Don't ask for anything. Don't look at any of the details because the details don't look so good, but just go for it and sign that deal again. I have no idea why they are so gung-ho with normalizing relations with the Iranian regime. I mean, I have some idea, but logic would dictate that it's not the right move. And what President Trump did in May of 2018, the first thing he did was keep his promise to withdraw from that deal because it's not anything that promises us any more security or safety. It doesn't stop them from pouring money into terrorism, and it certainly doesn't stop their nuclear program.
Why would the United States want to normalize relations with Iran.
Yeah, this continues the march of appeasement that President Obama started. That was the foreign policy of the Obama presidency, and of course Joe Biden being his vice president, and we assume that his presidency will look something like that, particularly regarding foreign policy. And that appeasement is to go and bow down and apologize to all of our enemies and say, sorry, we just want to keep things cool and let them walk all over us. And that's exactly how we got to where we are. And they delivered briefcases full of cash to the Iranian regime. They normalized relations with them. They loosened the sanctions. And what did they do? They turned around and poured that money into terrorism, into Syria, into Lebanon, into Hamas's pockets. So there are really no reasons to normalize the relationship with Iran. The people in Iran are suffering. They're advising against it. We know for a fact that it didn't lead us to anything better. It didn't get us anything, and they're saying to do it without any preconditions. So, look, this is going to be an interesting litmus test to see once a Biden presidency gets into the White House, will they repeat the same mistakes, or will they reevaluate the situation and say we need to take a different approach?
Homeland Security in the United States is warning that Russia may have hacked into federal agency computers. Apparently, the hackers may have infiltrated the systems by piggybacking on SolarWinds, which is a software used by the government and a majority of Fortune 500 companies. How high is the risk level for the American people right now?
It's extremely high. It has been very high, but extremely high because now we know that they have infiltrated. Before it was more of just the risk itself. In recent years, we have our enemies, and Russia, North Korea, Iran, China. Perhaps even Venezuela, piggybacking on the intelligence of the other nations I just mentioned, have been putting their money not into their military, but more so their cyber military, knowing that that is the frontier, that is the place where they want to put all their assets, because that's where they want to get their information, their intelligence, and all kinds of information. But more than anything, they can put a stop to the infrastructures or the apparatuses at the White House, on Wall Street, our electrical grids, and the threat goes on and on. So they know that that is the vulnerability of the United States. And I think that this is a big wake-up call for the United States to say, they're here, they have every ability to infiltrate us and to penetrate our systems without us even knowing, without them even stepping a foot on U.S. soil.
The outgoing Donald Trump administration imposed sanctions on Turkey due to its acquisition last year of the Russian S-400 missile defense system. And Lisa, the sanctions include a ban on all U.S. export licenses, visa restrictions, and asset freezes for blacklisted groups.
Yeah, Turkey has been a frenemy of the United States for many years now. On the surface, we're friends. They want to be a part of NATO. They want to be both a part of the European coalition, and they also want to be part of the Middle East. And because of Erdogan's movement more towards the Middle East, and when I say more towards the Middle East, more towards the militant groups in the Middle East, his actions both inside Turkey, which include rounding up of journalists, rounding up of policemen and judges and anybody who speaks against him, creating a power grab and fraudulent elections that would put him in power for many years to come. All of these actions, including becoming extremely aggressive with weapons, with getting very close to Russia, getting very close to Iran's regime, that is what makes President Trump reassess the relationship between Turkey and the United States, and not to continue with what is just a traditional relationship that nobody else wanted to really talk about or to disrupt.
The Trump administration has removed Sudan from its terrorism list. Lisa, it's a move that could help the African country finally get some international loans to revive its battered economy.
Yeah, it's a great move for Sudan, as long as they play nice and they really step up. This also is in the same path to leading them to the Abraham Accords, to normalize relations with Israel, to recognize Israel. Look, they're wearing their big boy pants now. They are now able to have a global relationship, whether it's with the United States, with Israel, bringing them into the modern Middle East with other nations like the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, Jordan, and allowing them to really, step out of the dark ages and into the next era. Now, this again comes back to, will they stay off the terror list? Will they not allow those very malignant, influences within their country to influence them and to get back into the government, or will they really step up and play this new role that they've been given?
Now, Lisa, what's really interesting about Sudan, they're off the terror list, but still with Sudan, Russia signed a deal with the African nation, establishing its first naval base in Africa. So is Vladimir Putin looking at maybe expanding its military reach in Africa?
Oh yeah, the operative word that you used, Hal, expand. Putin is all about the expansion. It doesn't matter what continent, and hopefully he'd like to be on all of them. And now he has access to the African continent. That is exactly the handbook or the guide that Putin has been playing. He just wants to expand his influence, and Africa is a great place to start. There is such a vulnerability there. There is such a vacuum there with regards to having all of that influence and being able to go there and give them, for example, internet and running water and infrastructure and help with anything they need in exchange for owning them and having that access there geographically, as well as having all those people there, all of that intelligence, and a base for their activities as well.
Azerbaijan and Armenia have done a prisoner exchange. It was all part of their most recent peace deal between the two former Soviet states, Lisa.
Yes, this ceasefire peace deal has been shaky, but it has lasted. We had a few false starts, and it's because both sides are so fired up, and this animosity between them will exist and will continue to exist. But for now, this has been brokered by international forces that came in and wanted them, and Russia, United States, all stepping up to say we need to have peace in this area. Too many lives have been lost, and now they will do a prisoner exchange. They will punish those who are the war criminals in this equation and hopefully move on from there.
According to the BBC, Azerbaijan has said it is charging two of its soldiers with mutilating the bodies of Armenian soldiers during the recent conflict. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, this is a symbolic punishment against those who went too far, who took this, and applied their own cruel punishments against their enemies. Again, showing that this is much more than going to war to fight for your country, but really going to war to mutilate the enemy. And in this case, there is a very deeply seated, animosity between the two. I know here in Southern California, there is a very large expatriate Armenian community. They have had many protests. There's actually even a hate crime where Armenians went into a Turkish cafe and destroyed the place. They beat up the employees there and the owners, and it's awful here in Beverly Hills, actually. So again, illustrating how deeply this is felt, even for those who are outside the region and really fighting and defending their people. So I think this is a great symbolic punishment of those who did this, so that it would not be repeated again, hopefully, and that they fight fair or not fight at all, which would be more optimal.
Lisa, closer to home, the Electoral College votes are in. U.S. President-elect Joe Biden is set to be sworn in with the inauguration next month. But the Trump camp is not conceding just yet. What's going on there?
It's interesting because news came out about the electoral votes just as, and the same time as when we're expecting news about some of these investigations from several states that have wanted to dig up more information and to give us more details about potential alleged election fraud. Look, the only thing I would tell you right now is to don't watch the news, don't watch the mainstream media when it comes to this story. We'll just have to wait to see what happens inauguration day, who's going into the White House. Look, everything that has happened has been the mainstream media. It's not the mainstream media's job to put the crown on the president. It is the Electoral College's job. And what happens is they basically push a certain story. That's very difficult to walk back that story. I'm not saying that will be the case, but let's say if there is a potential to show some evidence, every American should want to hear that evidence, regardless of what side you're on, because this just shows our due process. It shows that we have a system where we will look into the situation, we will hear the evidence, and we'll have to wait and see.
Could you imagine if Trump got a second term? How many media outlets will have egg on their face? I mean, not just the media outlets, but so many political pundits, like everybody. Like if it flipped and Trump got reelected?
Yeah, and I think people are very concerned not just about that, but about how people will react very emotionally to it. And I think that that's really the danger here is to see where the country has come so emotionally against, either for or against Donald Trump, for or against Biden. And because of that, I think we've lost some of that semblance of due process and really having a free and open press. All of that has really been tossed to the side this time around, and it's we all lose. We all lose, regardless of what side we're on. We lose when our nation really deteriorates in that way.
Amen. Political reporter and foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, thanks for your time joining me from LA.
My pleasure.
We are living in unprecedented times of physical, emotional, and spiritual battles that can cause fear, anxiety, and even depression. These can take a terrible toll on our bodies, minds, and our souls. Many believe that in order to win these battles, we need to learn how to protect ourselves with biblical spiritual principles. Joining me now to talk about it is Adam Davis, a former police officer and author of the book called On Spiritual Combat. Welcome to Bridge City News, Adam.
Thank you so much for having me on today. What a great time to be alive.
Amen, it sure is. Tell me about this book on spiritual combat. What prompted you to write it?
You know, my co-author and I, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, this was really a project that was based on his book that sold over 500,000 copies on combat. So we wanted to take the psychological and physiological principles from that book and look at what the scripture says. What does God's word have to say about deadly force encounters? What does it say about combat? What does it say about preparing? So we wanted to provide some basic tools. Think of this like spiritual warfare training 101. Like you go to basic police academy or basic training for military. Your first day, your first 3 months is learning the essentials. So that's what we really wanted to do, was provide some insight. And this was just based on some conversations we've had with first responders and military service members across the globe. And it's been very well received.
So Adam, oftentimes we don't really prepare ourselves for a tragedy. How can we do so with not being overly consumed with fear and anxiety?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, fear, there's a study out, and I don't have the exact link to that right now, but I can get it to you. There's a study out that shows that our brains, the same trigger in our mind that responds to drug addiction and other forms of addiction responds to fear the same way. So if we are understanding that hope, it can be more addictive than fear, that we have to be intentional about spending time in God's word, spending time in prayer, and having a lifestyle that is a lifestyle of worship, literally a lifestyle that honors him in everything we do. We understand that the enemies come to give, to kill, to steal, destroy. God sent his son, Jesus. He sent his son to give us abundant life. So practical principles puts into place that his word is the answer we need. A relationship with Jesus is the answer we need. But if we take these principles and say, how does this relate psychologically? How does this relate with our actions and our contribution in society? Then that means that we take the principles of his word, we prepare ourselves through time in worship and studying the word and knowing how to respond to conflict and tragedy. Jesus told us, in this world you will have trouble. It wasn't you may have trouble. He said you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. He is the only answer. And when we have a relationship with him and his word abides in us and we in him, we become more than conquerors in a world run by the enemy.
Now, you worked as a police officer, Adam. Tell me about your experience dealing with people who suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder.
You know, there's a lot of people that deal with this, and a lot of times we limit that description to individuals who have served in some capacity, whether a first responder or military. But it also applies to individuals who have been sexually abused or traumatized or abused in some other form. And we often neglect those things. At the age of 5, I was sexually abused. I've talked about that openly. Didn't address it for 20 years, nearly 20 years before I addressed it, because I wanted to hold on to that pain. I was afraid of dealing with it. I didn't want to address it. And so you deal with the exposure that first responders, specifically in the case that I'm talking about, law enforcement officers, that they deal with day in and day out. Let me tell you something. Human beings were never created to see or experience the things that our men and women of law enforcement deal with day in and day out. The violence, the evil, the hate. They were not intended. They were not created to witness that, to see it, to deal with it. But through proper training and equipping ourselves with His Word, we're still human beings. We're still human beings. And we try to carry those things in our own strength and power. So when we rely on the strength of God with the wisdom, the peace that only He can give us, then we can become more effective in our job. It's a dangerous, delicate situation. We shouldn't stereotype people if they have a designation or a diagnosis rather of post-traumatic stress. We should show them more care, and there should be systems in place where first responders are taken care of, not just for that incident, but for life. We should take care of them if they are serving our communities and it has an effect on them. And we have to do a better job of holding elected officials and appointed officials accountable and taking care of our public servants.
So with some of the struggles you've been through, I mean, you were assaulted, you said it at a very young age, also as a police officer, some of the things you must have witnessed. Did you struggle with PTSD yourself? Tell me about that journey.
Yeah, I woke up, I had night sweats, had nightmares, panic attacks, all the symptoms. Now, I never went to a doctor and received a diagnosis, but I can tell you all the symptoms were there. I could go through all the list of things. And how we respond to stress and traumatic experiences often looks like bad behavior or being reckless or things of that nature, because we're constantly chasing this chemical reaction that our bodies have when we're dealing with high stress situations. So for me, it was a case of how do I respond to this? Because I get to the point to where deep down in here, I feel hopeless and completely useless because I feel broken. Warriors aren't supposed to feel this way. We're supposed to be invincible. And that's just not the case. We have to come to the understanding that we're human beings. And the reason Jesus came for us is because we're broken. And without Him, we're nothing. And so when I began to see, I can't do this on my own, I can't carry this burden on my own, it became overwhelming and crushing. And it was just various experiences. I was never shot. I was never stabbed. I never took anybody's life. But it was just constantly seeing the evil around us and some other incidents that I was a part of. I found myself not sleeping well. I found myself waking up with nightmares, drenched in sweat, panicking and not responding well in different situations, and even shutting down and sort of zoning out when I was with my family.
How much did your family help you? Tell me about that.
Yeah. My wife was, she was an absolute divine appointment for me. She demonstrated the unconditional love of Christ, because she would sit and want to talk to me when I come home from my shift. I'm totally, shut down. So understanding how to address these things from a spouse perspective, look at what signs to look for, look at what sort of red flags to look for, and then how to address them. And so that's very important that we do have those conversations, and that's probably something for a later date. But certainly she helped me by not pushing me. And I'll tell you a real quick story. I know that you're limited on time, but towards the end of my career in law enforcement, she recognized these things. And so on a Friday, I got off duty and I come home, and she said, my mom is keeping the kids. We've got a lodge arranged for us in a place away, from about 6 hours away. And so we went to the mountains. We went horseback riding. We spent time away. She said, I recognize that you were exhausted and you needed a break. So recognizing that and taking those steps and just listening to me and being there and being present. And sometimes we're hard to love when we're going through those things, and understanding that that's when we need you the most.
Horseback riding sounds like a lot of fun right now, especially up by the mountains.
It does.
Now, what's your message, Adam, to people who are struggling with the impact of tragedy in their lives?
Yeah. Let me tell you, my tragedy, your tragedy are different. They're all different. But let me tell you what isn't different. That's the pain we feel inside. That pain we feel is the same. It's deep and it's overwhelming, and sometimes it feels like you can't breathe. For me, I've been there. But there's a real peace found in a relationship with God through His Son Jesus. There is a real peace available when we rely on the power of the Holy Spirit. Let me tell you, the same power that raised Jesus from the dead on the third day resides in you if you're a believer. And if you're not, All you have to do is call on him. Call on him wherever you're at, and he will respond. I can guarantee you, if you'll call on him, he'll respond. I dare you to try him. Relying on that peace, get into the word. Find people around you that have walked through the season that you're in, the things that you've gone through, and connect with those people. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. Find a local pastor, a local minister, different groups. One of the things I do is help a group called Reboot Recovery. We have small groups around the country. We're steadily deploying these groups around the country. And I think there's some in Canada, deploying these groups around the country where we are removing the barrier of isolation, because that's so dangerous. So having that courage to take a step and say, I need help. And I have a lot of officers that reach out to me from all over the country and Canada, Germany. And it's important that we're willing to get over that initial, I don't want to talk to anybody about this, and so that we can move forward. And it's important to have that and understand the power of faith and resiliency.
Now, you mentioned reaching out to a pastor, Adam. No battles we face should ever be fought alone. No man or woman is an island. What should we know about choosing confidence and mentors that include our spouses or friends or pastors, like you mentioned earlier?
I think it's important to look at people who are around you who have been through something. Look at somebody and the resilient spirit that they've displayed. They've been through some stuff. And you find the people that have been through some stuff and that are willing to love you through your stuff. That's what Jesus does. That's what he did. He met the woman at the well. He wasn't afraid of engaging drama and changing the narrative in the middle of it. He wasn't afraid of addressing death and pain and changing the tone of that conversation. Jesus did that. And so when we want to look for somebody, we want to look for somebody that's compassionate, somebody that's qualified. And what qualifies them is their resiliency, that they've overcome this stuff and that they're willing to talk to you and be confidential about it and get you further help if you need it.
Now, you're right that prayer and fasting can actually make us stronger warriors. Tell me more about that.
Some things we can only overcome with prayer and fasting. And for the past several months, I have put out a national call across the United States. If you aren't living under a rock and you see some of the events that are occurring in America today, you know that this is a season for the body of Christ to come to life, to awake the sleeping, slumbering saints. And this should be a time of fasting and prayer for law enforcement. What it does is it removes us from our reliance upon our flesh and our own wisdom and knowledge. And it reminds us that our strength and our source comes from God himself. And it comes from a relationship with him. And when we take the time to rely on him and be intentional about trusting him and walking in what I call flashlight faith. You know, his word said that his word is a lamp to my feet, a light to my path. I call it flashlight faith. I can't see the whole path, but I can see what's in front of me. And that's all he's called me to do, is take the very next step. And that's all he's calling you to do, is take the next step. Maybe it's the next step towards healing. Maybe it's the next step in equipping yourself and preparing yourself for spiritual warfare. And fasting and prayer is a great way to do that.
Now, training is also very important with anything, for a new job or if you're an athlete preparing for a major sporting event. Adam, you say training should include prayer drills. What are some of the elements of prayer drills?
Oh my goodness! You think about, you go through the Psalms. You look at some of the Psalms that you have, and David had some great prayers. So you think about how we go through firing drills, or we go through shooting drills, and all of these prayer drills that we talk about are listed in the book, and they're great resources. I'm not going to give them away, but I want to tip you out here. When you're a first responder, law enforcement officer, whether you're in the military, and you're learning to shoot with a firearm or you're learning to operate different weapons, there's different drills you go through. You want to spend the time becoming familiar. You don't have to have complex, complicated, big words. You want to spend the time to become familiar, and that it's part of everything you do. Just like when you breathe, there's tactical breathing to help you deal with panic attacks or anxiety or high stress. You want that to become part of who you are, part of your everyday life that you have. That it doesn't matter what happens. That's your first step.
Now, sometimes we face multiple threats all at the same time. What's important to remember during those moments?
Focus on the one who gives us victory. I'll tell you this. I had a dream recently that I was hiding behind a really big rock, and it was a giant red rock. And I was hiding behind this rock, and there were rounds being shot down where I was at from somebody down the road or down the range, and there were one round after another. And I remember hearing "be still," and "be still" to me meant I wasn't qualified. Initially, it meant I wasn't qualified to address the threat. But what it was God saying, "Be still, because I'm going to go take care of the threat down here, so that when you move in your next mission of battle, you're moving forward in victory." So sometimes we have to understand that it's small, subtle changes, small, subtle adjustments. Like if you're adjusting the scope on a firearm, it's not drastic changes. It's small, subtle changes that mean the difference between a hit on target or completely missing your target. So understanding, like in that case, it wasn't that I wasn't qualified or wasn't ready. It was he was literally protecting my journey so that I can move forward in victory. Listen when you pray. Listen to what his word says. He still speaks. His word is alive and well today. I wrote a book in 2017. It released in 2018. It's called Behind the Badge. It's a daily devotion for law enforcement. It's a bestseller in Canada and the United States. I wrote it 3 years ago. If you go and read some of the entries that are today, you would have thought that I had some kind of knowledge for what's going on today. That tells us his word is alive and well, and it speaks life. Wherever you are, no matter what you're going through, go to that word and spend time in it daily.
Adam Davis, former police officer and author of the book On Spiritual Combat, thanks for joining me today from Alabama.
Hey, thank you so much, Hal, for having me.
You bet. On behalf of all of us here at PCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless. Thanks so much for watching.